A survivor squad dashes down the street, pursued relentlessly by a horde of zombies. Moreover, the zombies were bizarre costumes and have peculiar shapes, suggesting they were celebrating some event before turning. Eliminating these few zombies wouldn't be difficult, but Squad X doesn't want to waste their energy, so they have no choice but to run for their lives. Only Murphy strolls leisurely, not even caring about Serena, who is about to give birth to his child. Murphy is truly a shameless guy. As they run, Doc notices a gigantic cheese beside him and can't help but stop to examine it. This is the largest cheese Doc has ever seen.
Biggest reel of cheese.
It's not real, Doc. Come on, we gotta go. Puppies and kittens.
Oh, it is real.
Roberta is speechless, but Addie also tells Roberta they can't move on because Serena's morning sickness is relentless, making it impossible to proceed. Roberta helplessly looks back. The zombie horde is closing in. They must find a way to delay them.
Got an idea. Out of my way, Doc. I need that cheese.
Oh, come on, Warren. Can't a man eat a giant cheese wheel in peace?
Naturally, Roberta's idea is to push down the gigantic cheese. Addie immediately understands and rushes to help. They had inadvertently run over a lot of zombies with a big clock back in Philadelphia. Now, the cheese rolls down like a snowball, crushing zombies in its path.
Damn.
The effect of the giant cheese was immediate and they took advantage of the buffer time to leave quickly. Fortunately, they later find a luxury off-road vehicle, sparing them the trouble of walking, but every few meters, they must stop because of Serena's frequent morning sickness. Murphy, far from caring, shows a look of disgust. Addie walked over and said to Murphy,
"So she says that talking to you makes her feel better, and that she can't get in the car unless you make her feel better."
No.
Murphy.
What?
Murphy, who fears no one except for a respectful fear of Roberta, patiently stays by Serena's side. Upon seeing Murphy next to her, Serena immediately starts talking excitedly, sharing her observations from the journey. Her excitement sends saliva flying everywhere, which disgusts Murphy even more. Especially the following scene makes Murphy feel utterly nauseated. Unable to stand it any longer, Murphy quietly approaches Roberta, hoping to leave this woman behind. Roberta disdainfully refuses, shocked that he would even suggest such a thing. However, bringing Serena does slow them down. The best solution is to find her a safe place. Moreover, if Murphy were to get into trouble, the child in Serena's womb might also save the world. Vasquez immediately recalls a church community they passed to the southeast months ago, isolated from the world. A perfect place to settle Serena. Roberta agrees that it's a suitable location. Suddenly, there's an ambush from the hillside. Luckily, they dodge quickly. 10K uses his sniper rifle to check. There are about 3 people up there, likely trying to rob them, and the gunfire is intense, as if they have no intention of letting them live. Roberta's anger flares. She instructs 10K and Addie to cover her while she and Vasquez plan to rush out and take down these bastards. But before they can even strategize, more gunshots ring out.
Goat-loving horde! There is a baby on board here! A mother-loving baby! I am going to rip off your arms and saw off your head!
This woman is too fierce. Everyone watches in stunned silence.
People are so rude.
Roberta and a few others were in shock and didn't notice Vasquez's slight movement. He quietly took off the walkie-talkie and then quickly hid it in his backpack. 5 minutes later, they reached the hillside, and everyone who had ambushed them earlier was dead. Just like that, Squad X acquired a new vehicle. This time, Serena and Murphy sat together. They were being excessively affectionate, which Roberta and Vasquez found somewhat unbearable. They just wanted to reach the church community as quickly as possible. There wasn't much danger on the road thereafter. On the contrary, the post-apocalyptic world, devoid of human pollution, seemed more beautiful and the air fresher. After driving 20 miles, the car stopped. They had reached the very secluded church community, but Vasquez sensed something was off. A few months ago when he had visited, there were people around. How could it be so quiet now? Could something have happened? For safety, Roberta asked 10K to scout ahead, while the rest stayed vigilant, ready to retreat at any sign of danger. They didn't notice Vasquez sneak off under the pretense of keeping watch to a spot where no one could see him, and then he took out the walkie-talkie and tuned it to a specific frequency. Vasquez was definitely hiding something. Meanwhile, 10K, with his gun, approached the community and finally spotted 5 figures in the farmland.
Hey! Hey, no, it's okay, I'm not a zombie!
Just as 10K turned around, 2 zombies pounced on him. He quickly used the butt of his gun to hit them, white dust covering him in the process. Without time to understand what it was, 10K seized the opportunity to pull out his dagger, slitting one zombie's throat and blowing the head off the other. Another zombie lunged toward the 5 people, but 10K aimed carefully and took his shot. Before 10K could catch his breath, a woman started screaming at something in the distance. It was a mutated goat. 10K was about to approach when they hurriedly left without acknowledging him. Puzzled, he followed them, all the way to their church, but they didn't stop. They hurriedly entered the houses and locked the doors as if 10K was some kind of plague.
Hello? Somebody in our group needs some help. It's a safe place to stay. That's all.
10K was also angry. He had saved them, and yet they showed no courtesy. Dispirited, he returned to the main troop and reluctantly relayed the situation. Roberta felt they still needed to go in, preferably to settle Serena there, but something about the place made her uneasy. They had to be extra vigilant.
I haven't felt right since 1970.
Once they entered, the situation was as 10K had described. Every house was shut tight, and the people inside were unwilling to communicate. Then Vasquez returned. He'd said he'd gone out on sentry duty, then disappeared, and now he'd popped up again. He explains that he ran into some zombies, but instead of going into detail, he changes the subject and says that he found a leg of lamb and Roberta's favorite strawberries.
Why don't you have white powder on you?
White powder?
Just as Vasquez was about to find an excuse, a howling sound came from behind him. Several zombies emerged from the houses. Addie came at them with a mace, and the powder splattered all over her as well. Roberta wanted to help but was stopped by Vasquez. In this situation, ranged attacks were better. The people inside finally came out to assist, and 10K also cooperated by killing zombies from the side. 3 minutes later, the zombies were cleared, and the church's people finally came out to meet. They said Squad X should not have come here. Roberta quickly expressed that they had no ill intentions and were just seeking a safe place for the woman to give birth. The man explained that this place is equally dangerous for you, as it has anthrax. Upon hearing this, the color drained from the faces of Squad X. Anthrax is a skin-transmissible disease that can lead to death if severe. Roberta immediately ordered a hasty departure, fearing infection for the entire squad. But just then, 10K collapsed to the ground. After a quick examination, Doc found that 10K had developed a high fever. The man indicated that he had inhaled too much dust and clearly contracted anthrax. If there were antibiotics, there would still be hope. Doc, who usually had a penchant for hoarding medications, had some antibiotics stashed away and went to look for them in his bag. But just as he reached the car door, Serena began to show signs of distress.
Water broke, Daddy-o.
Well, don't just stand there, fix it!
It's all good. Won't be long now, Papa.
Now they had to stay until Serena's childbirth was completed. With no other choice, the man and Doc had to carry 10K into a room. Once inside, they saw that many people in the church community were also ill, all being treated there. A woman quickly came over with water and fed 10K half a pill of something unknown. The man explained that it was cycloserine, traded from a neighboring farm, originally intended for livestock but effective for humans too. They used half a pill because of the many sick people. They had to ensure everyone got some.
Enough for everyone to recover.
The man's silence said it all. Later, Roberta and Vasquez left the room, planning to look for antibiotics in the nearby town. They realized the church's limited medicine could only delay the inevitable. Moreover, the locals would obviously prioritize their own people. They found the man to ask about the nearby town, but he told them not to bother, as the surrounding area had almost been stripped of medicines. Only Woodburg Town, further away, might still have a chance, and there's a clinic there that has a good chance of finding antibiotics. Upon hearing this, Roberta immediately instructed Vasquez and Addie to go look for it. The man also offered to go with them. He wanted to find something that would be useful to their community. Meanwhile, Serena was about to give birth, crying out in pain in the room. Doc comes in with a medical bag. Doc, not even a real doctor and now faced with delivering a baby, felt immense pressure. He quickly knelt in front of Serena, preparing to assist with the birth. 3 minutes later, a heart-wrenching howl resonated from the straw house, covering miles around. But half an hour passed, and the child still wasn't born. Doc continually comforted Serena beside her, urging her to breathe like blowing up a balloon.
What are you doing? You gotta help her!
That's all I got, man.
Murphy was also nervous at the moment and took the initiative to show concern for Serena.
Just let it out.
Meanwhile, Roberta was comforting Doc, telling him that childbirth is always like this and there's no need for excessive self-blame. At the same time, Addie and the others, guided by the man, finally arrived at the small town and quickly found the pharmacy. The pharmacy was very quiet. They shouted a few times but received no response. It seemed there were no zombies. They found many useful small items. However, when they reached the medication area, they saw a figure sitting on the ground, unsure if it was a person or a zombie. Addie coughed, and the man immediately convulsed, then showed a pained expression as he slowly pulled the syringe out of his arm. It was evident that the man was an addict. When he looked up and saw them, he was startled.
It's okay. It's okay.
You're not zombies.
We're not zombies.
You're not zombies. You're alive.
Yes, we're alive.
The man seemed delirious, unable to distinguish between reality and fantasy. Once he realized they were alive, he said,
You gotta kill me. You gotta kill me, okay? Because I wanna die, so if you just...
Hey, you take everything in here?
It turns out the man was in extreme pain from his drug addiction, so he went to the pharmacy and consumed all the medication in an attempt to commit suicide. But unexpectedly, he still survived. So, the man wanted Vasquez and Addie to end his misery, as he lacked the courage to do it himself.
Boy! Back up, man.
The man, seemingly finding a way, picked up a syringe from behind and threatened them with it. A tragedy still occurred. Such things are common in the post-apocalyptic world, but the churchman couldn't believe what he saw. He looked at the body, then looked up at the bloodstains on the wall and uttered an unusually saintly phrase.
You killed him. Self-defense. I wouldn't have killed him, he would have killed me. You believe it is better to kill than to die?
Vasquez and Addie were confused. Because the medication was consumed by that person, they had to return empty-handed. Roberta, full of expectation, came out to greet them but quickly saw the answer in their expressions. At that moment, 10K's condition must not have been good. Just as Addie was about to follow inside, she slipped and fell to the ground. Roberta hurried over to check, and Addie had also developed a fever and contracted anthrax. The X-team is in a bad way. 10K was vomiting blood in bed, and without medication, he wouldn't last long. Addie's infection caught them off guard. Since Roberta, Vasquez, and Doc had served in the military and were vaccinated against such diseases, they were unlikely to get infected. Now the pressing issue was that Addie and 10K's illnesses couldn't be delayed any longer. Doc suggested, as a last resort, to inject Murphy's blood. This suggestion was immediately rejected by Roberta. She didn't want Addie and 10K to end up like Cassandra. They decided to look for medication instead.
The only thing that's gonna help them is more Cipro.
Should we try another run?
Roberta felt somewhat guilty because her intention was to seize the church's medicine. Instead of letting them distribute the medication to the patients slowly and wait for death, they could take it and concentrate on treating 10K and Addie.
They'll all die.
They'll all die anyway. Like you said, with the rationing, none of them will get enough Cipro to survive.
It's your call, Chief.
Roberta really had no other option. She knew this went against Squad X's moral code, but they were also tasked with saving the world, and Addie and 10K couldn't fall here. Then, Vasquez analyzed the situation. Most people here were feeble sectarian women with almost no combat ability, and their weapons were farm tools. Seizing the medication would be easy. They just hoped to avoid casualties. Having decided, they no longer hesitated. Armed with guns, they stormed into the infirmary.